Good evening and welcome to the National Press Club Election Leaders Debate. Please put your hands together for Prime Minister Kevin Rudd and Opposition Leader Tony Abbott. My name is David Spears. I'm the political editor of Sky News Australia, and we have three other press gallery journalists on our panel tonight: Lyndall Curtis from the ABC, Simon Benson from News Corp, and Peter Harcher from Fairfax. Hannah Porter is our official timekeeper tonight from the National Press Club. Now, we've asked the audience here in this room to remain silent now until the end of the debate. But for those of you watching on the couch at home, feel free to cheer, boo or shout at the TV as you see fit. Now, both parties have agreed to a set of rules this evening, and you will hear a chime sound when their time for answering each question is almost up. But we do want this to be a genuine debate. As much as I will be endeavouring to ensure equal time and equal treatment, we want this to be a genuine contest of the visions these two men have for our country's future. Now, we tossed a coin before the debate. Kevin Rudd won the toss. He has decided to speak first. This means he will also speak first at the conclusion of the debate. So, Prime Minister, I'll invite you now to make your opening remarks on why you want another 3 years in office.
Thank you, David. This country of ours, Australia, is one of the best countries in the world. We have a strong and dynamic economy, recognised as such around the world. We believe passionately in a fair go and a fair go for all. We're also, by instinct, a positive people, and we prefer to work together rather than tear each other apart. That's who we are as Australians. And the Australia we all know and love has been built by you, the Australian people. Built by you, our businesses, both big and small. Built by you, our seniors who've worked so hard in the past, and built by you young people out there who are our dynamos of the future. Most importantly, it's built by you, the families of Australia, saving and providing for your kids' future. This economy is strong. This election is about the future strength of our economy and how best to secure it. The election is about a clear choice on the economy, on jobs, on how we support families under pressure and how we support education and health. We've managed to keep the economy strong. We are supporting families under financial pressure by a number of different measures. We've helped to keep interest rates low, the lowest they've been in 60 years. We've helped also by lifting the childcare rebate from 30 to 50%. We've also brought in paid parental leave. We've also got rid of work choices to protect fair pay and conditions, penalty rates and overtime. We've made record investments in education and record investments in health. The party that has brought you Medicare is the party that now has brought you disability care. But there's so much more to be done. The truth is, with the ending of the decade-long mining boom, we face new economic challenges. We must not have all our eggs just in one basket. We must now diversify to grow the industries and jobs of the future. We've got to manage a new great economic transition. We did this in the Hawke and Keating government when we actually had to modernise the economy from the old economy of the past. We did so during the global financial crisis, keeping Australia out of the great global recession and keeping our AAA rating. But now we must transition again. That's why I argue we need a new way to take Australia forward because of the new challenges we face. A new way to turbocharge our small businesses in the future through a national broadband network to boost productivity. A new way to invest in our kids through a $15 billion Better Schools plan that will benefit every school and kid in the country. A new way to fund our hospitals. A new way of positive politics in this country as well. And to conclude, I can see a great new future for Australia. And the government I lead knows how to build that future for all Australians. To you, my fellow Australians, drawing on the great strengths of our country as it exists now, under my Prime Ministership, I offer a new way to secure Australia's future.
Prime Minister, thank you. Tony Abbott, I'll invite you now to make your opening remarks.
Thanks very much, David. This debate is between Mr Rudd and me. But the election is not about Mr Rudd, it's not about me. It's about you, the people of Australia, Who can make your future more secure? Who can make your life better? Who can ease your cost of living pressures, and who can make your job more safe? Elect a Liberal National Coalition government, and this is how our country will change. We'll build a stronger economy so that everyone can get ahead. We'll scrap the carbon tax, but we'll keep the compensation so that the tax cuts and the pension increases are real. We'll get the budget back under control because governments, like families and businesses, have to live within their means. We'll build the roads of the 21st century. That means WestConnex in Sydney. It means the East-West Link in Melbourne. It means the Gateway upgrade in Brisbane. It means the North-South Road in Adelaide. It means Gateway in Perth. It means duplicating, finally, the Pacific Highway, upgrading the Bruce Highway and also the Midland Highway in Tasmania. And we'll stop the boats, because no self-respecting country can hand over control of part of its immigration program to people smugglers. This is the positive plan that the Liberal National Coalition offers Australia. This is our positive plan for a better future, to restore hope, reward and opportunity. We are a great country, but we can't afford another 3 years like the last 6. Mr. Rudd talks about a new way. Well, if you want a new way, you've got to choose a new government.
Tony Abbott, thank you very much for that. Now, before we get to questions from my colleagues on the panel, as agreed, we're going to debate the major issues of the campaign. Let's start with the economy. Now, Prime Minister, you mentioned the global financial crisis in your opening remarks. It is 5 years since that hit. And yet you're spending more this year, this financial year, than at any time during Labor's period in office, and indeed any time during the Howard years as well. You're now also forecasting unemployment to continue rising by another 80,000 places. Can you understand people feeling a little nervous about giving Labor another 3 years?
David, the key challenge for the global financial crisis was to prevent our economy from falling into recession, and practically every other economy in the world did. And while millions of people lost their jobs around the world, we have, until today, added nearly 1 million more than we had when we went to office. 450 new jobs each day, despite the state of the global economy. If you look to the future, we also believe in keeping our economy strong. You've also questioned our performance relative to our predecessors on things such as tax and expenditure and employment.
It was on spending. It's higher now than at any time in the Howard years.
Expenditure now, as a proportion of GDP, is a little greater than it was on the average for the Howard government period. About 24% of GDP under them, about 25% under us. And the reason for that difference was investing in our country's future, to ensure that we did not allow the country to fall into recession, and as a result have, frankly, hundreds of thousands more Australians out of a job. That would have collapsed tax revenues, increased what we'd have to spend in terms of unemployment benefits, and created a real debt problem for the future as well. So I would simply make that point in terms of making a hard choice. The alternative, of course, is slash and burn. And we've seen cutting to the bone in so many other parts of the world.
All right, we'll get to
the Brits have done that and produced a recession. Okay, that's not our way.
Let's get to the alternative. Tony Abbott, you do criticise Labor often for running up debt. Yep. But your own plans, now, just listing a few of them, you want to cut the company tax, you want to scrap the carbon tax, you want to scrap the mining tax, you want to undo the fringe benefits tax changes. You're saying you'll match Labor's spending on schools and on disabilities. You also want to spend a lot more on paid parental leave and a multi-billion-dollar direct action plan. Where is the money coming from?
Well, David, the thing that you've got to understand is that there has been an enormous amount of waste over the last 6 years. Mr. Rudd talks about keeping Australia out of a recession, but spending money on pink bats that caught fire in people's roofs, or spending money on overpriced school halls at double what would have been a fair market value, that didn't keep us out of recession. What kept us out of recession was the fact that Mr Rudd inherited a strong economy thanks to the reforms of Mr Hawke, Mr Keating, Mr Howard and Mr Costello, and the China boom kept going. That was what kept us out of the recession.
OK, my question is about how your numbers add up.
You will see in good time before polling day exactly how much we're going to spend, exactly how much we're going to save, and exactly how much better the budget balance will be under the coalition than under the Labor Party.
Mr Abbott, you acknowledge people are tuning in tonight. Yeah. You've been in this job for a few years. They want to hear tonight how you're going to stop things getting worse.
OK, well, just on the savings thing, David, the tax cuts without a carbon tax and the pension increases without a carbon tax that I'm committed to, and the company tax cut that I'm committed to, costs $17 billion over the forward estimates period. Now, in my National Press Club speech in January in this very venue, and in my budget reply speech, I identified a series of savings that equal $17 billion. Okay.
So, is that good enough, Prime Minister? You're the one raising fear campaigns about the GST. Is those savings measures good enough?
I deal in facts, actually, David, and the facts are these. Mr Hockey, Mr Abbott's Treasury spokesman, has said that the Liberal Party faces a $70 billion funding gap. Their figure, not ours. Senator Wong, the Finance Minister, has verified that in a statement recently, as last week, in detail, line by line. And the bottom line is this. Here we are 4 weeks before an election, and the Australian people, if they were voting yesterday, according to the opinion polls, would have elected Mr Abbott as Prime Minister. Surely 4 weeks before an election, he can stop being evasive about where the $70 billion worth of cuts to jobs, to health and education would fall.
Prime Minister, the numbers have moved around a lot. The numbers have moved around a lot. Treasury's numbers have been downgraded and downgraded and downgraded. You can understand some reluctance to lock in on the current set of numbers.
Well, our experience has been that it is important to be transparent about what you're going to cut and what you're going to save. What we've had from our opponents in this election campaign is a continued policy of evasion on this. Let's just say that the $70 billion can't be made up in terms of all the cuts which have been partly foreshadowed to jobs, health and education. Well, it's legitimate then for us to raise a question about what about the future of the goods and services tax. Mr Abbott and the Deputy Leader, Julie Bishop, who's here this evening, and Mr Hockey have said that the review of the goods and services tax is on the table.
Well, let's clear this up once.
Will it be increased?
Will it be increased?
And will it go to food?
Will it be increased?
No. No, it won't. The GST doesn't change under the coalition, and I think our country, I think the people at home who are watching this deserve better than a cheap scare campaign from the Prime Minister of this country. Look, this idea that the coalition is ready with a great big scalpel to slash health, to slash education, to slash jobs is simply wrong. It's in fact Mr Rudd's government which cut $1.5 billion out of hospital funding, including retrospective cuts in the last mid-year economic update. It's Mr Rudd's government that cut $3.8 billion out of higher education. No change.
Is that just
from
for
the
one
GST.
term?
No change to the GST. And look, a matter of fact, which I think is very important, the GST cannot change without the consent of all the state and territory governments. And last time I looked, that included two Labor governments. Is that good enough
for you, Prime Minister?
No, it's not, for two reasons. Mr Abbott and Mr Hockey and Julie Bishop have been asked this very question in the last week.
Well, he's been pretty clear tonight.
No, but what he's said, and they have said repeatedly, is that their tax review will include the future of the goods and services tax. If you're not going to change the tax, why is it in the review? We have made a clear commitment. It will not be increased from its existing level of 10% and it won't be applied to food. They have not said that. On Mr Abbott's second point, let me just remind him about the agreement of the Commonwealth and the states. That exists as a product of legislation by the Australian Parliament, which any future Parliament can change. In other words, the National Parliament could act on basis of a new policy decision by Mr Abbott's government.
A quick response from you on that, Tony Abbott.
Look, it's a little embarrassing, David. This government has been in power for 6 years.
Just on the GST, though, in your plans. It is in your review, though,
isn't it? The GST is not going to change.
Ever.
The GST can't change without the agreement of the states and territories, and last time I looked, that meant the agreement of the Labor Party. But it is a little embarrassing.
So you won't review it? You won't review it?
It's not going to change. It's a little embarrassing to have the Prime Minister of this country, who had 3 years in power himself, who was a member of the government for the rest of the 3 years, who voted for everything, including the carbon tax, who was part of the promise to deliver the surplus that never turned up. After 6 years, the best he can do is run this embarrassing scare campaign.